afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, our chapter, locomotion and movement, the last topic. So our last few topics, in which one of them, joints. Okay. Joints are the point of contact between bones in an endoskeleton. Every point where two or more number of bones are meeting each other, or maybe the bones and cartilages meet each other, these points are termed as joints. These joints are important for locomotion and movements. Joint is the point of contact between two or more number of bones or bones and cartilages. Bones and cartilages. So where bone to bone contact point is there, or where bone to cartilage. Such contact points are known as joints. What they facilitate? Well, these joints facilitate locomotion and movement. Whenever we show the movement, it's the muscles which will generate force, whereas the joints will act as fulcrum. They will act as fulcrum. I hope you have understood the concept of different types of lever systems in physics, basic physics, where 3 points very important in different types of movements. Fulcrum, then R, the resistance, and E, the effort. Effort, resistance, and fulcrum, 3 important points are required over there. Have you studied or not? Physics, basic lower standard physics, 3 types of lever systems and all that stuff. So in that you have studied about fulcrum, so I'm not going in detail of the same. So whenever your body shows movement with the help of muscles, your joints will act as fulcrum. Remember this point. Whereas the muscles will generate the force for such movement. So joints are basically required for movement and locomotion of the body. These joints are mainly divided into 3 categories based on the material at the joint position. One set is fibrous joints, another is the set of cartilaginous joints, and lastly the synovial joint. Joints, the points of contact between bones and cartilages, where 2 or more bones are meeting, or where 2 or more bones and cartilages are meeting each other, these points are called joints. Whenever body wants to show the locomotion and movement, or movement and locomotion with the help of muscles, at that time muscles will generate the force for the movement, whereas joints shall act as the fulcrum points. So basically joints are needed for the movement. These joints of the body are classified into three categories based on material present between the bones at the joint position: fibrous joints, cartilaginous joints, and synovial joints. In the fibrous joints, between the bones at the joint position, fibrous tissue is fibrous connective tissue is present, dense fibrous connective tissue is present. Then in the cartilaginous joints, between the bones, cartilages are present. And in the case of synovial joints, between the bones, synovial cavity filled with synovial fluid are present. Let's talk about three different types of joints of the body, starting with the first in that sequence, that is fibrous joints. Have a look at it. Fibrous joints. Which type of tissue should be present between the bones in these joints? Then the answer is fibrous connective tissue, dense fibrous connective tissue. In chapter number 7, animal tissue, particularly connective tissue, you have learned about loose connective tissue and dense connective tissue. So I'm talking about dense fibrous connective tissue, collagen fiber rich tissue. It is present between the joints. These joints allow no movement, or they do not allow any movement, whichever way you consider. They, when they are holding the bones which are at this with these joints, they are not able to move at the joint position. So completely kind of immobile joints. At the joint position, bones are not able to show any movement. So firmly fixed that they cannot show any movement. Example, the skull bones, bones in the skull, the flat skull bones. If you see them, their joints are of such category. Look at these joints. All these joints between these bones. These are the examples of fibrous joints, completely immobile. And you know, particularly in a cranium, when you see them, these joints, they look like sutures. They look like sutures. Sutures means Gujarati mein ne kahiye sanda, as if the stitches are being there arranged between the two adjacent bones. So these fibrous joints in the cranium are specifically known as sutures. They are called as sutures. I repeat about the first category of the joints which you have studied just now. Number 1, fibrous joints. Between the joints, there is a dense fibrous connective tissue present. Between the bones at the joint position, one can see the dense fibrous connective tissue. Example, skull bones, particularly the cranial bones, the parietal with frontal and uh, parietal with temporal, or parietal or temporal with occipital, and these kind of joints, if you see, are classic example of fibrous joints. Herein, the joints look like the stitches between the bones, so these are also identified as sutures. These joints are even identified as sutures, remember. Next, before I go to the next, Let me just brush up the things. What is the role of joint at the time of movement? Joints will play the role of what? Yes, exactly. Zanil Saurabh, correct. Fulcrum, where muscles will generate the force, the joints shall act as the fulcrum points for the movement and locomotion. Two or more bones at the point of contact, or bones and cartilages at the point of contact constitute dash. Yes, Gallo, henna, etc. Correct. They are called as joints over there. Then the three different types of joints, in which first category of joint, which is the first category of joints? Archie, Galav, etc. Correct. Yes, fibrous joints. Specifically, which tissue is present between the bones at such joint? Full name of this tissue. Yes, Rishi is bang on target. Dense fibrous connective tissue. That's the one. Next is Fatima. Yep. What type of movement shall be permitted by such joints? What type of movement shall be permitted by such joints? No movement. Yes, exactly. Zanil is correct. Udra is correct. Immobile joints, these are. Classic example, bones of which part in the endoskeleton show such joints? Yes, Rishi, right. Ideally, yes, Fatima is more precise. Skull bones, particularly the cranial bones, when they show such joint, they look like stitches and you call them as jugal is correct. Sutures, Archie, correct. Sutures is the term for them. Next is cartilaginous joints. I told you cartilage is present between the bones. Example number one. Can you name this joint? I had explained in a last lecture, name of this joint. Between the two coxal bones. Jugal, yes, you are right. Pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis is the joint between the two coxal bones over there. Do you remember which cartilage in it? Yes, Galav is correct. Fast, rapid reply. Fibrous cartilage. That is a one example of cartilaginous joint. Another one. Which tissue is, okay, first of all, what is the name of this bone? One at the labeling point. Yes, Galav, the sternum. And what about the other bone labeled over there? Jugal, Saurabh, correct. Ribs. And can you make out the tissue which is present between this rib and the sternum over there? Which tissue? Galav, hyoid is not a correct term, but it's called hyaline. Yes, Archie is correct. Hyaline cartilage. Again, the cartilage is present at the joint, so it is called as hyaline. It's called as a cartilaginous joint. A hyaline cartilage between the ribs and the sternum establishes this joint, cartilaginous joint. Another one. These two centra belong to which bones, which structures? They are what? Vertebral column, vertebrae, isn't it? Plural is vertebrae. And between them, this structure which is present should be called as what? What's the name of the structure? Exactly, Saurabh. Intervertebral disc. And this intervertebral disc is made up of fibrous cartilage. Again, the cartilage. So, three classic examples of cartilaginous joints you have gone through. Number one, the pubic symphysis between the two coxal bones having fibrous cartilage. The joints between ribs and sternum established by hyaline cartilage. And the intervertebral discs which are joining the successively arranged vertebrae are again made up of cartilaginous pads, particularly fibrous cartilage. All the three are examples of cartilaginous joints over there. See, cartilaginous joints permit limited movements, unlike the fibrous joints, which completely make the joint immobile, no movement at all. Unlike that, the cartilaginous joints permit slight movement. So limited movements are permitted by such joints. These are the cartilaginous joints. Second category of joints. Which is the second category of joints? Cartilaginous joints. Uh, which cartilage between ribs and sternum? Yes, Gala, right. Hyaline. Which structure between the successive vertebrae? Gala, correct. Intervertebral discs. And these discs are made up of Jugal, correct. Rishi, correct. Fibrous cartilage. And which is the joint between the two coxal bones, inner ends of the coxal bones? Yes, it's called pubic symphysis. Rudra is the first one. Archie and Gala, back to back, correct answers. Which tissue at the pubic symphysis? Again, the fibrous cartilage. Gala was the first one. Jugal next. What sort of movement shall be permitted by uh, cartilaginous joints? Limited movement, isn't it? The third category of such joints, it's termed synovial joints. It is termed synovial joints. Now, before I go in detail, just understand the synovial types of synovial joints before I explain them. Understand the synovial joint concept. Let's say these are the two bones at the joint position. Okay. This is the one and this is the another one. These are the two bones at the joint position. Now, first of all, their heads are supposed to be covered by hyaline cartilage. So their heads are covered by the hyaline cartilage. So if these are the bones, heads of the bones, then these are the hyaline cartilages. These are kind of capping of the bone. ये अगर bone है तो its head is gonna be capped by the hyaline cartilage. Then the whole joint will be enclosed in a cavity which is fully lined up by the membrane, called as synovial membrane, and it is filled with the fluid secreted by the membrane itself, the fluid which is called as synovial fluid. देखिए ये जो membrane होता है, ये ब्लू कलर वाला आपको अगर दिखता है तो that's a synovial membrane, और यहाँ पे जो fluid होता है that's a synovial fluid. Okay, so that's why this joint, which is in the synovial cavity surrounded by synovial membrane and filled with synovial fluid, this joint is called as synovial joint. These joints are known as synovial joints. बोलिए, क्लियर है कंसेप्ट? गालो, आस्क. हाँ, क्या बोला सर? अच्छा. And at this position, special connective tissue will be holding the two bones in position, because synovial membrane is a very thin membrane. It cannot hold the two bones in this position for long. So a special tissue is there which is called as ligament. आपको पता होगा कि bone to bone connection is established by ligament. So these ligaments hold the bones at their position over there. So this is a kind of a joint which is called as synovial joint. अब इसकी सब टाइप्स है. There are sub types of this synovial joint, so that we can learn, but basic idea of synovial joint should be there in your mind. Have you understood or not? बोलिए, पता चला क्या आपको concept synovial joint का? Fine. In a synovial joint, the heads of the bones at the joint position are covered by what? Hyaline cartilage, isn't it? And then the joint is entirely enclosed in a membrane which is called as synovial membrane, and it secretes synovial fluid in the cavity called synovial cavity. And the bones at this position are held by which specialized tissue? Ligament. Gala was the first in virtually all the replies. अच्छा, इसके लिए एक और वर्ड है इस cartilage के लिए. It is called articular cartilage. It is called as articular cartilage. The hyaline cartilage disc or cap at the head of the joining bone, that is termed as articular cartilage. So such joints are present in our body. There are different types of such joints. We will see the examples. Some of them which are called as pivot joint, then hinge joint, then saddle, then you have a ball and socket, and others are not there in syllabus. The plain and other variety, condyloid variety is not there. So we got this four varieties of synovial joints: ball and socket, hinge, pivot, saddle, and एक और है जिसको कहते हैं gliding joint over there. So that is what we are going to study now, one by one. Each category we're going to study. Basically, whenever such a synovial joints are established, they permit considerable movement. You see, fibrous joints, they provided no movement. Then cartilaginous joints provided slight movement, little movement, limited movement, partial movement. And synovial joints provided full movement, large scale movement, okay, considerable movement. So they are fully movable over there. They are the ones which will actually help in our locomotion of the body and many other movements. Let's see their examples one by one. First category, ball and socket joint. See, you don't have the details, but if you try and understand the basics, in this, one of the bone will act as a ball and another bone will act like a socket, like a socket. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello students, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello students, am I audible?
Yes, sir,
So
you
I
are
was
audible.
talking about the ball and socket joint, the one in which one of the bones shall act as the ball, whereas the other one shall act as the socket. So that kind of a joint. जैसे कोई एक बोन में सॉकेट जैसा शेप है और दूसरी साइड पे बोन जो है it has a ball like structure, so they fit into each other. That is a ball and socket joint. Shoulder joint, tell me, in the shoulder joint, which one plays the role of ball? Head of the humerus, am I right? Humerus head, exactly, Gala. And can you tell me what can act as the socket in this joint? What will act as a wrong? Clavicle is wrong. Gala is correct. Rudra was correct. Glenoid cavity. You see the humerus head like a ball and glenoid cavity like a socket. They establish a shoulder joint, a classic example of ball and socket joint. Another example, if I ask you, which is another example of a ball and socket joint? Tell me. Zenil Galav, hip joint, exactly. What shall act as a socket over there? What shall act as a socket in that? Oh, Archie, wrong there. I said socket roll. Gallav, finally you searched out the answer. It took some time to find the answer from the book. Anyways, correct. Acetabulum cavity. Acetabulum cavity is the one which will act as a socket. And what will act as the ball over here? Head of the femur. Yes, that's the one. Look at it again. Purposefully, deliberately, I removed it. Now you can see. Yeah, this is the one, the coxal bone. It's acetabulum cavity, and this is the head of the the femur head fitting into the acetabulum cavity of coxal bone. Together it makes a hip joint, and it is a classic example of a ball and socket joint. Another category, hinge joint. Another category is which one? Hinge joint. You see, whenever you will see the window, not a slidable window, but the one which you can open and close, and the door, कहीं पे भी आपको अगर डोर दिखता है तो उसमें देखो वो जो डोर का पीछे का पार्ट है ना, वहां पे डोर इज जॉइंड विद द that frame with the help of one structure that is like a hinge. उसको hinge कहते हैं. देखा आपने hinge? डोर जिस फ्रेम से अटैच्ड है वो फ्रेम से अटैच पॉइंट पे देखो एक स्ट्रक्चर है ना, उसको हिंज कहते हैं. डोर एक प्लेन में मूव कर सकता है. सिमिलरली इन दिस वन योर बोन will move in a single plane at this position. Example, elbow joint. Between the head of the humerus and ulna. Humerus and ulna at the elbow joint, they constitute the hinge joint. ulna की cavity में humerus का projection fit होता है like a hinge. Another example is a knee joint. Another example is a knee joint between femur and tibia. Femur and tibia along with the patella. Another classic example of a hinge joint. Third one is a pivot joint. Third one is a pivot joint. It is between atlas and axis. ये आपका first vertebrum और ये second. देखो first तो skull के साथ attached है, but second is the one which creates an axis. जैसे ये first है और ये second है, तो सेकंड की एक्सिस पे फर्स्ट रोल ओवर होता है दोनों डायरेक्शन में. आप अपना हेड अगर साइडवेज मूवमेंट दिखाते हो ना, लेफ्ट एंड राइट, you are looking straight and then you roll your head left and then come to the straight and then right. At that time, your first vertebrum atlas along with the skull rolls over the second vertebrum called as axis. So in such a joint, one of the bone acts as a axis and another one will partially roll over the axis. These type of joints are called pivot joint. These are termed as which one? Pivot joint. You know, जैसे pivot का मीनिंग क्या होता है? Centralized point. जैसे क्रिकेट टीम में कैप्टन का रोल पिवोट होता है, पिवोटल रोल होता है, ऐसा बोलते हैं. मीन्स कैप्टन का सबसे मेन रोल होता है जिसके अराउंड सब रोल हो, आई मीन थिंग्स मूव अराउंड दी कैप्टन्स एक्टिविटी, उसके जो मेन रोल होता है उसके अराउंड में. सो वी से पिवोटल रोल. तो इसमें भी इन द सेम जॉइंट, द पिवोटल जॉइंट, one of the bones shall act as the axis and another one will roll over this axis in a partial manner. One classic example is atlas and axis. दूसरा एग्जाम्पल भी है जिसमें कहते हैं कि radius and ulna, radius rolls over the axis of ulna, partly it happens. So that is the third category. Another one is there that is called saddle joint. Saddle joint is between the carpal and metacarpal of thumb. ये thumb है, तो ये जो carpal है which is in the line of the thumb, और वो जो उसका metacarpal है thumb का, इसके बाद दो phalanges ऐसा. तो यहाँ पे जो joint है ये वाला, this joint is a saddle joint. This is a saddle joint. We don't have the much of detail about it, so we don't go in that much detail. Saddle joint is between the carpal and metacarpal belong to thumb. Between the carpal and metacarpal of thumb, there is a saddle joint. Last but not the least, the gliding joint. Not this one. Yeah, between these ones, these joints, between the rows of carpals, two rows of the carpals, these joints are classic examples of gliding joint. Over here there are gliding joint. The bones will slide over each other. So 5 different types of synovial joints you have studied. Let me ask you the examples. Which type of joint between head of the humerus and the pectoral girdles, glenoid cavity? Jugal, right? Ball and socket. Which is another example apart from the shoulder joint? Which is another example of a ball and socket joint, a one type of synovial joint? Hip joint, Rishi and Archie and others. Which one acts as a head of the, or rather ball in this hip joint? Femur head. Yes, Rishi, right. And which one will be the socket in this case? कौन से bone का कौन सा part? Acetabulum cavity. Archie correct, Rishi correct. Acetabulum of coxal bone. An elbow joint between humerus and ulna is an example of hinge. Which is another example of hinge joint? Yeah, knee joint is a classic example of the same. What about first and second vertebrae? Which joint? Yes, Jayati, correct. Pivot. By the way, what is the name of the first and second? Achi, correct. Jugal, correct. Atlas and axis. Which is another example of pivot? Radius and Zanil and Tyre and others. How about the joint between the two rows of carpals? Carpals. Rudra wrong. Zanil wrong. Fatima correct. Gliding. Galo correct. Gliding. जैसे ही मैंने सीक्वेंस चेंज किया गलत गलत आंसर आना स्टार्ट हो गया. And saddle joint is present between which two? And others correct. Carpal and metacarpal from the wrist and metacarpal from the thumb only. किसी ने metacarpal alone लिखा है तो wrong. रीजन मैं बोलता हूं आपको, बाकी के मेटाकार्पल्स के साथ नहीं है ये सैडल, इसलिए. ओके. Well, here I conclude the topic of joints and I switch over to the next one, the diseases. Diseases related with the skeletal system and muscle system of the body. First is the Myasthenia Gravis. It's an autoimmune disorder. First question, what is an autoimmune disorder? बोलिए, ऑटोइम्यून डिसऑर्डर का मीनिंग क्या होता है जी? Automatically occurring disorder. What an cute answer. गालव ये क्या था? कोई और देता तो ठीक है. Zenil is right actually. Zenil is right in explaining that when our own immune system attacks our body components, then it is called as autoimmune disorder. In such disorder, our own immune system attacks with its antibodies on our body parts, our body structures, then it is termed as autoimmune disorder. One such example, Myasthenia Gravis. In this autoimmune disorder, our immune system attacks neuromuscular junction. The antibodies that are generated by the immune system, they attack our neuromuscular junction and damages these structures. What are these structures encircled by red? बोलिए. Izanil Jugal, absolutely wrong. Rudra, wrong. Galav is the only one correct. Receptors. And these receptors belong to what? They are present on Zanil, correct. Sarcolemma. And they are meant to receive which material? Acetylcholine, exactly. Zanil and others, correct. So antibodies come and damage these structures, acetylcholine receptors on sarcolemma. So whenever stimulus comes and acetylcholine is released, it is not able to bind to these receptors because receptors are already damaged by the antibodies. So the acetylcholine is not able to stimulate the muscle for contraction. And in this scenario, person will suffer from sort of paralyzed condition. Muscles will not be moving properly, contracting properly. There'll be a fatigue condition, weakening of muscle activity, and gradually paralysis of skeletal muscles occurs. This is called as Myasthenia Gravis. Second is muscular dystrophy, a gene disorder due to the mutation in a gene. Such disorder happens in which progressive degeneration of skeletal muscles occur. एक एज के बाद एडल्टहुड में आके ये म्यूटेटेड जीन्स की वजह से just because of the mutated gene, this genetic disorder, person's skeletal muscles undergo degeneration and finally lead to the death of a person. Another one, tetany, a rapid spasm. मैंने आपको बोला था ना, uncontrolled autonomous contraction of your voluntary muscles, particularly a rapid spasm in a muscle because of low calcium level. Body में जब hypocalcemia होता है, whatsoever reasons may be, somehow when your body suffers from the shortage of calcium ion, you experience that your muscles are wildly contracting. This rapid spasm condition due to the hypocalcemia, it is called tetany. कैल्शियम इंजेक्शन देने से, सप्लीमेंटेशन से नॉर्मलाइजेशन हो सकता है. Particularly these three were related with the muscular system, the disorders related with muscular system. Number one, myasthenia gravis. Is it a physiological disorder, a genetic disorder, or immune disorder? What type of disorder it is? Okay, in the immunity also, Rishi has written autoimmune disorder category. Yes, you are right, absolutely right. In this case, our immune system damages which parts of our body? Which muscles are under target? Neuromuscular junction. Hena V. Patel is the one giving correct answer. Jugal, correct answer. Skeletal muscles are affected. Fatima, correct. Neuromuscular junctions are affected. Rudra, correct. Skeletal muscles. Neuromuscular junctions established by the skeletal muscles. Specifically at the neuromuscular junction, which component will be damaged? Acetylcholine reactors on sarcolemma. गालव ने तो पूरा एड्रेस लिख डाला. Yes, that's the way to write it down. इसके 3 सिम्टम्स लिखो. किसी को होता है ये प्रॉब्लम तो ग्रेजुअली क्या क्या होगा? फैटीग होगा. Yes. Weakening of Rishi was the one with all the 3 combi of 3. Yes, Rishi. Bang on target. Fatigue of muscle, weakening of muscle, and paralysis of skeletal muscle, which is a very common or very well-known genetic disorder related with the muscles. Muscle system से related genetic disorder कौन सा है? Muscular dystrophy. Yes, that's the one. Which muscles are progressively degenerated in the same? You got correct. Archie, right. Skeletal muscles. Low, okay. Tetany is caused by The physiological disturbance caused by what? Jugal, Zanil, both correct. Hypocalcemia or low calcium ion level in the blood. What is the main symptom? Jugal, right. Rapid spasm. Now, another one is osteoporosis. There may be different reasons behind the osteoporosis. The one in which your bones become porous, so it is called osteoporosis. Certain conditions are the ones in which from your bones the calcium starts leaching. Leaching means release of calcium from the bone to the blood. So आपका बोन्स में से जो कैल्शियम निकल निकल के ब्लड में आता जाएगा, तो bones will become weak, they will become porous. This is called as the osteoporosis. Several reasons can be there behind this decrease in the bone mass. प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि अगर बोन्स पोरस हो जाएंगे तो उनमें फ्रैक्चर होने का चांसेस इंक्रीज हो जाता है. सो दे आर प्रोन टू फ्रैक्चर्स देन, सो वल्नरेबल हो जाता है. अब इसके डिफरेंट रीजंस हो सकते हैं. एक रीजन है एज, इंक्रीजिंग एज. आपने सुना होगा ना, ओल्ड एज पीपल 70-80 वाले लोगों का बोन फ्रैक्चर थोड़ा जल्दी होता है, फ्रीक्वेंटली होता रहता है उनको ये प्रॉब्लम. सुना है ऐसा? Because their bones have suffered from osteoporosis, they have become fragile, vulnerable to the breakup, so they experience fracture. थोड़ा भी प्रेशर आ जाए तो फ्रैक्चर हो सकते हैं ये बोन्स. दूसरा एक फैक्टर होता है जिसको कहते हैं मेनोपोज. फीमेल में 45 प्लस और माइनस फ्यू इयर्स एज पे menstrual cycle and uterus cycle, ovarian cycle stop हो जाते हैं, they lose their fertility. तो उस टाइम पे हॉर्मोन्स का लेवल ड्रॉप हो जाता है, एस्ट्रोजन particularly. Because of the decline in the estrogen also, a lot of calcium will be coming out from the bones into the blood. तो मेनोपोज के बाद फीमेल्स में particularly 45 के बाद बोन्स के प्रॉब्लम स्टार्ट हो जाते हैं. इसीलिए they are advised to take lot of calcium and vitamin D as per the prescription of the doctor at the age of 40. I think 35-40 के बीच में जो फीमेल है उनको तो ये स्टार्ट कर देना चाहिए. So you may advise your mothers, your elder ones who are anyone female close to 35 plus till the menopause, it will happen that gradually the estrogen levels may decline, so they are advised to take vitamin D and calcium and exercise. Third, during its temporary reasons, I'm not writing, but pregnancy is the another one. Pregnancy में क्या होता है, फीमेल का lot of calcium बेबी का बॉडी कंस्टिट्यूट करने में चला जाता है. फीमेल्स थोड़े वीक रहते हैं उस पीरियड में. So these are the different reasons in which calcium level lowering in the body, in the bones, leaching of the calcium from the bones makes the bones porous, fragile, vulnerable to fractures. Prime reason is increasing age, old age. 2, menopause in female, and temporarily it can be seen during pregnancy in the female. फिर आता है arthritis. What's the meaning of this term? ITIS, itis. Inflammation. Jugal correct. Zanil correct. Inflammation. I hope you have studied about inflammation. I'm not going in detail of the same, but you know that stomach inflammation is called gastritis. The liver inflammation is called as hepatitis. If you remember the kidney in which nephron inflammation, nephritis, already you have studied about it. Bronchi inflammation is bronchitis. So itis is the suffix behind the organ which has undergone inflammation. So when I say arthritis, arthros plus itis, arthros term refers to what? itis का तो मीनिंग होता है inflammation, but arthros is for what? Joints. Inflammation of joints. देखिए जब भी किसी जॉइंट पे अटैक होता है, इन्फ्लेमेशन होता है, डैमेज होता है, तो भी इससे आर्थराइटिस हो गया। अब ये डैमेज तीन तरीके से हो
Sir, you are mute.
Have a look. This is the joint. This is the articular cartilage. अब ये cartilage ओवर यूजेज की वजह से, because of increasing age, over usage, if this cartilage gets damaged, then the bones will come in contact with each other directly and can damage each other. Surface of the each other, they can damage. So such damaged the cartilage, it is called osteoarthritis. आगे वाला जो पढ़ाया था वो osteoporosis था, bones का porous होना. यहाँ पे bones की articular cartilage जो head region पे है वो damage हो जाती है, that is the joint to be disturbed. This kind of inflammation of joint because of damaged articular cartilage is called osteoarthritis. Second, rheumatoid arthritis. An autoimmune disorder. The one in which antibodies damage this membrane. Which membrane is damaged by the antibodies? Synovial membrane. आपका जो joint होता है वहां पे जो synovial membrane है, that membrane is being damaged by the antibodies in such autoimmune disorder. This causes inflammation of joint. एक में articular cartilage को damage होता है because of overusage, that is osteoarthritis. In another one, antibodies attack the in an autoimmune disorder, the antibodies attack the synovial membrane of the joint and make the joint to be inflamed. दोनों कंडीशन में जॉइंट को डैमेज होता है, जॉइंट इमोबाइल हो सकता है. एक तीसरा है प्रॉब्लम, उसको कहते हैं गाउट, गाउटी आर्थराइटिस. I told you osteoarthritis is because of the damage to the articular cartilage, mainly because of increased age or overusage. Rheumatoid arthritis is because of the damage of the synovial membrane due to an attack of antibodies, autoimmune disorder. Gouty arthritis is because somebody having higher amount of uric acid in the blood. किसी के blood में because of the somehow metabolic disorder condition, metabolic disorder state, the one in which excess of uric acid gets accumulated in this region. यूरिक एसिड के जो क्रिस्टल्स होते हैं जिसको कहते हैं सोडियम यूरिएट क्रिस्टल्स, सोडियम आयन और यूरिक एसिड के क्रिस्टल्स होते हैं, they will accumulate at the joint position. That is termed as Gauti arthritis. Whenever we will show the movement, these crystals will penetrate in this membrane, उसमें pierce करेंगे और synovial membrane को rupture कर देंगे. That is the Gauti arthritis. In any of these arthritis, the inflammation of joints, your joint is becoming damaged and movement is painful, and finally it may turn to immobile condition. It can be because of the overusage of the bones, so the articular cartilage is damaged. An example of the same, osteoarthritis in knee. सबका knee cap replace करना पड़ता है, knee joint में problem होता है, सुना है लेडीज में ज्यादा होता है knee joint का problem, सुना होगा आपने, बोलिए गालो.
सर
हाँ
सर આજે ગાઉટી આર્થરાઇટિસ છે.
તારો અવાજ નથી આવતો પેલા.
હેલો હેલો
Hello.
હેલો
Is it to me only or others are also not able to hear what he says?
No, sir, we are able to hear him.
हाँ गालो, થોડું loudly બોલ.
હેલો
हाँ બોલ.
હા સર આજે ગાઉટી આર્થરાઇટિસ હોય તેમાં
हाँ.
પેલા કે ને કે આપણે પગના તળિયા દુખતા બધા કે યુરિક એસિડ વધી ગયું એ ગાઉટી આર્થરાઇટિસ.
Yes, that's the one. So I was talking about osteoarthritis, the one in which due to age or overusage, your articular cartilages are damaged, hence your bones are undergoing friction at the time of movement of the joint. This causes pain, it is called osteoarthritis. Second, rheumatoid arthritis is the one in which due to autoimmunity or antibodies start attacking the synovial membrane at the joint. Again, the movement will be painful at the joint position. Third is the Gauti arthritis is the one in which in someone's body, due to the metabolic disorder, excess of uric acid is formed. These uric acid crystals, they accumulate in the synovial fluid, and whenever you show the movement, they penetrate into the membrane and create a lot of pain, damaging the synovial membrane. This is called as Gauti arthritis or gout. Uric acid crystals are responsible for the same. So that was about the profile of the disorders related with the skeletal system, mainly the joints. Well, in which disease your bones become fragile, they lose their bone mass and become vulnerable to fracture. Yes, Rishi, right? Osteoporosis. And what are the two prime causes of the same? Which hormone level related with the menopause? Which hormone level, what position causes it? Low estrogen, yes, Gala and Rishi, correct. And aging, exactly, Rudra, correct. They are responsible for it. Inflammation of joints is called as arthritis, exactly. Osteoarthritis is damage of dash because of dash. Tell me. Osteoarthritis occurs because of the damage to the dash. What is being damaged by what? Articular damage due to overusage and aging. Rishi, fantastic answer. Rheumatoid arthritis is because of attack of dash on the dash. Which ones attack the dash part of the joint? Antibodies and synovial, Zenil and Gala, both correct. Zenil less specific, Gala precise. Synovial membrane लिखा है, Zenil ने joint लिखा है, इसने membrane लिखा है, वो better term. Synovial membrane attacked by the autoimmunity. Yes, Fatima, you are right. And gout is caused because of accumulation of dash at the joint. Uric acid crystals, sodium urate crystals, correct. Jugal and Rishi both right. Crystals of sodium urate accumulated over there, penetrating and causing diseases. Well, that was the profile of the chapter number 20. 2 more lectures are left tomorrow, Thursday, and then Saturday, back-to-back regular lectures. We will run one of the chapter, probably chapter number 22 we will start with. और उसके बाद एग्जाम के बाद उसको रिज्यूम करेंगे. Okay? So thank you for your cooperation, for joining for this meet. बोलिए फातिमा.